Hooligans! We back for another episode of the Hooligans League podcast. And once again, a very interesting week. A lot of blowouts. Big changes in the rankings and the standings. We got some repeat winners of prizes. We have some tough losses. We have just a lot going down. Injuries. All leading up to a very dramatic final week of the regular season. I'm going to try to break it all down, all the implications that come into this week here on this week's podcast, because it is the season finale, the regular season finale. We'll definitely have to change up the format come playoff time. So let's get into it. Week 4, let's go.
Best in the business when it comes to a quarterback sneak.
It's time! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go!
All right. Man, it's sad. It's a little sad that this is the final week of the regular season. This will be the last podcast where we talk about every team, what they have on the line this week, and the 6 different matchups. From here on out, we're really only talking about 4 games at the most. So that is sad. It's been a great season, and we're coming up to the close, but we're going to keep this episode exciting because there's still a lot on the line. For some, it's purely money. For others, it's a chance to win the whole thing. And for some, it's all about ego and pride. You're just trying to avoid coming into last. So I'm going to try to cover it all in as much detail as is digestible. But there is a lot to dissect here. So there will be things that I just don't even bother getting into the nitty gritty for. But there will be certainly a lot to watch for. Might even have to do a short Monday night football update to see what is on the line for that final game of the fantasy football regular season. But first up, per usual, let's talk about last week. Let's get into the matchups. There was really 2 different types of matchups. We had the games where they were just fighting for playoff seeding, and then we had games that were really fighting for keeping their chances to make the playoffs alive or trying to avoid last place. So for the first category, we had 2 games where there really wasn't much to lose, but some things to gain. Chow versus Silverman. Chow's really just caring about points at this point. He's trying to score as much points as possible to try to be the top scorer on the league. Silverman, he's trying to increase his odds of getting the 2 seed. But unfortunately for him, he couldn't do it. That bumps him from 2nd to 4th, but he's still in reach. Chow now has a 3-game lead on first, which is ridiculous. And Silverman is going to need a pretty big week to try to get back to that 2 seed. In the second matchup, we had Dan Santola, who was in the exact same position as Silverman, only difference by a few points. He needed that win to try to put him in good shape for that 2 seed in the bye week. He's unable to get the dub. So now he also is going to need a big week and a few things to go in his favor to get that bye. Radler, he had nothing from a competitive standpoint to fight for because he was already out of the playoffs, but he was trying to avoid last place, and he was able to put himself into decent position with a solid win over Santola. So now he is in 10th, looking like if he has a decent week this week, he will not be getting that toilet bowl medal. So not too much drama here. a little bit of stress, obviously, but the real fun came in the other 4 matchups. So the first one we had, or the first 2 really, were me and Rick's games. Me and Rick were going against Caveney and Jovi, respectively, in pursuit of trying to get that second bye. I was a game behind Rick. Rick was behind in the points. We really needed a win, and ideally one of us would win and the other would lose, and that would help us set us up for good position. We both did win, so that put Rick in great position for the bye week. Now it's his to lose, but I am in reach, and it all depends on what happens this week. Those 2 wins put Jovi and Caveney now at risk of coming in last. Thankfully for them both, Caveney has had a decent scoring season so far, so he's in 9th place, and really will need a bad week to fall all the way to last. And then for Jovi, while his season hasn't been great, he had a really good week this week, and that bumped him up in the standings a little bit, even though he lost. So they are at risk of falling to last, but they're certainly not the favorites for that title, that crown, even though they lost to me and Rick. In our other 2 matchups, definitely different setup, different layout for these ones. So Chris needed to win to keep his playoffs alive, and he did it. He got the dub, and that sent James to last place. But unfortunately for Chris, he also really needed Andy to lose, because he is 300 points behind Andy in the standings. So he really needed him to lose, and Andy did not want to lose to Dick. He won't do the mile race with Dick, but he will fucking run laps against him in fantasy. So Andy sends Dick to 11th. Chris sends James to 12th. Both of those teams are in some serious trouble when it comes to last place. They are going to need wins big time. Andy has basically secured his playoff spot. Chris is basically out unless each of his players scores 40 this week. We're talking about the fantasy football miracles of all miracles. Their places are pretty much secured. If anything, Andy has the potential to move up in the standings a little bit, but he cannot get that first round bye. So movement there. Some teams are at big risk of falling into last place, and others, they weren't able to take themselves out of contention. Chris is the only one who has no chance at falling to last place. So his team did his job, but just couldn't get the good luck that he needed. So with all that madness, we have 2 prizes to give out. Come from the same game, the highest scoring matchup of the week. We got Rick winning the $20 Andy Bobandy Team of the Week, and we got Jovi winning the $10 Best Loser Award. So Venmo's coming to you both very shortly. It's funny to look at that, never would have expected. This is the weird Wild West of fantasy football. Jimmy G in week 13 playing such a crucial role in the league. If he doesn't get hurt, maybe these prizes flip. Maybe Joe V wins and Rick loses. That puts Joe V out of contention for last place. That puts Rick down the standings and not the favorite to get the bye week. A lot changes. On the top earners awards, things shift. So it's funny how one little injury can change so much in a league, but I would imagine both teams are happy with this outcome, securing one of the final cash prizes that we'll see until the end of the playoffs. So a couple other things to give out, or one other thing to give out. Manager of the week. Not much to talk about here. I think there was 4 blowouts. and then one close game, and then that game with Rick and Jovi. The average margin of victory was 24 points. And four games or more were closer to 30 to 40 points. So there wasn't many plays that would have made the difference. But there was one that stood out. And so we do need to give out that prize. And James, this one's for you. Very close matchup with you and Chris. I believe it might have been the lowest scoring matchup of the week as well. You lost by 0.24 points. Now, when I look at your team, initially there's nothing that really stands out there. And this game really came down to your wide receivers. You had 5 startable wide receivers. And honestly, I think you played the 3 wide receivers that most of us would have played. Honestly, this really probably is more honorable mention category or territory, but we needed to crown someone for the sake of it. And when I looked at your roster a little bit more, so you had those 5 wide receivers to play. You had to start at least 3. And funny enough, you started the 3 worst 3 on your team. Any other combination of wide receivers, and you win. Swap any one of the 3 with any of the 2, and you win. Start the 2 you benched, and then any one of the 3 you started, you win. Doesn't matter how you cut it up. As long as you start guys who played and that weren't the 3 you started, you win. So kind of shitty luck, but we got to crown someone this week. And for you, or for this week, that's you. But hey, at least it's not you. It's not for you starting someone who was injured this week. So depending on how you look on it, you're on the climb. So that's the manager of the week. Hopefully we'll have some more interesting ones in our final week next week. All right. Fucking bye-mageddon time. The second week this year where we've had 6 bye weeks, or 6 teams on bye. Falcons, Bears, Packers, Colts, Saints, Commanders. It's tough. It's a tough time to have injuries. There's nobody on the waiver wire. There are several teams on byes. And if you have the injury bug, you might be stressing out a bit. And there are quite a few teams, who are going to be stressing until Sunday, until they know if their guys are playing. Chow, Najee, and Tony, questionable. We got Rick, Kenneth Walker, and Sutton. Questionable, if not doubtful. I think Sutton might be doubtful. I know he's not an everyday starter for you, but when you combine that with Walker, things do get a little trickier. I got CMC, Judy, Mike Williams, and Treylon Burks now, all questionable. Most of them probably will play, or at least half of them. Tua, with his ankle injury, probably going to play. Questionable, limited. And Njoku, still dealing with his shit. Silverman's got those too. Then we got Dan Santola. We got Tannehill, Myers, and DJ Dallas, who's only even has relevance because of Kenneth Walker. Then we got Andy with Trevor Lawrence, Waddle, Josh Jacobs, and Foreman, all questionable. Chris, I'm happy that you aren't in contention this week looking at these injuries, because Lamar going down, that would have been brutal. Mixon still isn't back yet. And then Hirsch going down early last week, that was tough. And then Gaveney, you got Debo. Maybe some smaller injuries with the teams outside of that, but nothing that stood out. So decent amount of injuries up there. And limited amounts of fab to spend, limited amount of players on the waiver wires, tons of bye weeks with players that can't be dropped. That's going to make it be an interesting week of fab, usually. So, let's see how it went.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, 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 money.
Dollar, dollar.
Fab dollar. All right.
Dollar, dollar.
So, for for money spent in the final fab transaction with the full league, because after this week, teams out of the playoffs will not be participating in fab. We had some stuff go down. Jovi dropped $31 on Purdy. It's a pretty good amount of money right there. Rick spent $23 on James Cook. Then Radler spent $15 on Huntley. Silverman made 2 transactions, each for $3. One for Noah Fant, one for DJ Chark. And then Rick spent another 2 on Tennessee D. And then Radler spent 0, but picked up Hunter Henry. So let's see how y'all did. Okay. Some of you did okay. You'll notice that I haven't been featured in one of these in a while because I'm broke as shit. Jovi, you're $31 on Purdy. It's okay. You've been needing quarterbacks all year long, and then Jimmy G goes down. Obviously, you're going to spend big. You could have got him for 15. I've seen worse fab pickups for quarterbacks before. Trust me. Rick, $23 on James Cook. Very hot transaction. Very hot. The cheapest you could have got him for was 22. So you wasted $1. Andy went for 21. Caveney went for 18. Your brother Dan went for 17. And I know there was more. So you nailed that one. Radler, you spent 15 on Huntley. Could have got him for 10. So nothing major there. Silverman, you could have got Fant for free. And you could have got Chark for $1. So could have saved some money, which could cost you in the playoffs. Who knows? But these players could also help you in the come playoff time. Rick, you spend $2 on Tennessee defense. Could have got him for free. And Radler, your $0 bid on Hunter Henry was actually perfect because Chris, once again, gets beat on the waivers. He also was trying to get Hunter Henry for $0. But you got it based on waiver priority. So fun last round of fab, full league. It's really painful to watch players go, and I don't have any money, but I am no longer last in fab dollars. I want to say there's 5 teams who have less money than me. So fuck y'all. I'm a big saver these days. Transaction count.
I'm Pickle Rick.
We're never going to hit 100, and that upsets me, Rick. I might have to take this segment out of the podcast because it is no longer as entertaining as it once was. You only made 3 moves this week. Now that might have been the most in the league, but it's still not a high number. You're at 69.
Giggity, giggity, crabbity, giggity.
I'm at 49, and Chris is at 42. So we'll see if we keep this counter in. Disappointed in you. All right, so let's get to the money. Regular season awards. $50 prizes. We already got 2 of them confirmed. Chow, you're the number 1 seed. You were it last week. You cleaned this up. $50. You've already been paid. Already been added to your account. Silverman, same with you for the Survivor Championship. You two got 2 of the top 3 prizes locked in already. Congratulations. Fuck you. Yada, 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 yada. We still got 3 other prizes on the line, and they will be decided this week. So let's talk about those. For the final $50 prize, for most points, we got Andy leading the pack with 1,815. Round up 1,816 points. We had a couple people who are trailing right behind. I'm about 14 points behind. Chow's about 20. And then we have some dark horses in contention. If they were to have monster weeks, and Andy has a down week, they could jump me and Chow and take this title. Rick is 60 points behind, Silverman 75, and Dan Santola 118. So odds for them aren't looking good, but they're still in contention. For our $25 prizes, Dan Santola still the top dog from week 5, 186.24 points. That's the number to beat. Nobody cares about any other weeks at this point. That's the number. You need 186.25 to win $25, and you got to do it this week, or else the money is Dan's. So you got to feel good about that, Dan. And then for most points against, the final $25 prize, Andy, once again, leading the pack. He's got a 12.5 point lead on James. And then a bunch of teams that really aren't close, but could leap him. Jovi, me, Dick, all between 65 and 75 points behind. And then Ryan, Radler, 93 to 100 points behind. And then there were even a couple teams that were like 102 or 105. I don't remember what the number was, but I didn't have enough space on the screen to include them. And the chances of them making up that difference is just so small, and doesn't have to do with you because it has to do with your opponent. I didn't want to list them. So James, you got a chance to win $25 here. You're only 12 behind. But Andy, it's looking like you could pull in another $75. I mean, if you had a huge week this week, you could pull in $100. So you got to be feeling good. You're in the playoffs. You're already one of the top earners, and you have a chance to make even more money this week. So a lot on the line. And we'll talk about the different implications later in the episode, but this is where we're at with the season prizes. Oh yeah, and James, you still got the worst week of the season. Week 5, 68.36 points. You got one last week there's really nothing you can do about it. You just gotta hope that someone else has a terrible week. But maybe you'll walk away without that honor being yours. And coincidentally enough, the best week of the season and the worst week both took place in week 5. Weird coincidence. Okay, so week 14 power rankings. Nothing really new here. Actually, slight change. Because it's the final week of the regular season, Kursefa had to adjust his formula a tiny bit. Instead of using the fantasy analyzer ranking that is for rest of season, how you're going to do for the rest of season, he made a small tweak so that it was just week 14. So when he looked at the analyzer rankings, he's just looking at how good is your team today, because that's all that matters right now. Rest of season really only matters for playoff teams, and even some of those teams will have buys next week, so it doesn't matter as much for them either. So that's a small tweak. Didn't really make too much of a difference in the outcome of the power rankings, but did want to just know that there's more weight on how good your team is today, because this is the final week of the playoffs, or of the regular season. So let's get into that. First one's easy. Not complicated. It's fucking Chow still. He's won 11 in a row. He's claimed the bye week. He's the number 1 seed. There's no fucking drama here. He just cares about scoring as many points as he possibly can to try to win another $50. This shit's boring at this point. I think we're all waiting for him to lose. And until he does, he's probably staying up here the whole damn time. So that's the one spot where things get a little bit more interesting, 2 through 5. So Rick stays at 2. Because he's won 3 in a row. His team's a fucking juggernaut. He's projected to score the most points every week. The analyzer loves him. He's bumped up to 4th in points finally after being 5th or 6th most of the season. He's at number 2. He's also 9-4. So he's a game ahead of everyone else who's trying to get that second round bye. So then in the final 3 spots of the teams competing for the second round bye, I jump up to 3rd with a win. Big part of that is because I won and the 2 Dans lost. Another factor of that is I'm second in points, so I have a tiebreaker edge there. And third is the analyzer likes my team this week, has me as one of the top teams. If not two, then maybe three. So I get the edge at the 3 spot. Then Silverman gets the spot, gets the 4th spot. He's been the better team for past several weeks. Both Dans have lost 2 in a row. They both fall down 1 spot, but he gets the edge for points and recent performances. And I believe the analyzer ranking liked him a bit more. And then Dan Santola, you close off the 5th spot. Still in pursuit of that second round or the first round bye, but it's not looking too likely. This week is probably more just an ego week for you. You want to see a good performance from your team going into the playoffs so you can feel good next week. So those are the top 5. To round up the playoff participants, really, is obviously Andy. He's on a 2-game winning streak. One of those being an Andy Bobandy Team of the Week earner. He's either, even though this game really doesn't matter for playoff standings too much or for this playoff position too much, he's could potentially cause some fucking drama in the league. With a win, he could potentially jump up to the 4 seed, I think. Maybe even the 3 seed he can jump up to the 4 seed with a win. And as the top point scorer, that makes some sense. Or he could be just a nightmare of a 6 seed and just cause chaos for the team that is the third ranked team. So I really hope I don't get paired up with him in the playoffs, but there's so much in flux right now that could happen pretty easily. So that's the top 6. Those are our playoff participants. The only thing left to be decided is who gets that second round bye and who's playing each other. Everything else is wrapped up. Then in 7th is Chris. He's won 2 in a row. He's made sure he can't come in last. He did all he could to make the playoffs, but unfortunately, Andy also won 2 in a row. And that just really shut the door on Chris. But we're going to highlight him first because he is in a class above everyone else. Because everyone else in the league only has 4 wins. So congrats to Chris. You're not in the group of trash. You're just also not in the group of class. You're just average. And that's okay sometimes. So in the toilet bowl, we have 5 teams in the toilet bowl. Jovi, you are currently 8th in the power rankings. You've jumped up a spot. You had a pretty good week, top 2 in scoring. You're 7th in the season in points. And really, you got screwed by Jimmy G. You might have been in the class with Chris if you would have won last week. But for now, you are still in contention of coming in last. The odds of it aren't great. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But you could fall to the bottom of this list. But for now, you're 8. Radler, you got to win. You're up 3 spots from the bottom to 9 now. You're number 5 on the analyzer this week. So Graceffa loved you for it. But you still are at risk of falling to last. You're 9th in points. So you're right in the middle of this shit list. Gaveney, 3 losses in a row for you, brother. You're lucky you're 8th in points. Because you're trending down. You're falling 2 spots in the power rankings. And I don't think you got a good matchup this week. It's not looking great for you. But with your point total, your fate is in your own hands. You just got to win. James, you staying at 11. So the good news is you didn't go down. The bad news is you're not going up. You're 11th in scoring. Only ahead of Chris, who's not even involved in this madness. So from that perspective, you're in last in scoring. It's not looking good for you, but you're not as bad as Dickey right now because he's in the final spot. Graceffa hates Dickey's team right now. The analyzer had him in last by all accounts, whether it's rest of season or week 14. No matter how you cut it, his team looks bad. He was the lowest scorer last week or second lowest scorer last week. Yeah, it's looking like it's coming down to you two. So you guys better have good weeks. So that's the shit list. One of these 5 teams will be wearing a fucking toilet necklace next year and signing it, and going down in history for being the last place team. So those are the power rankings. We'll see how we change things up come playoff time. Obviously, won't need to talk about the bottom 6 teams. So there, we'll have to find some way to keep this still interesting. All right, so to wrap us up, got to talk about the implications for the season. There are 2 matchups that are simply for the bye weeks, and it's very obvious who those are and how those play out. And then we have the shit list battles, and we'll address all those. I'm going to try to outline all of the implications for each game as clearly as possible, but this shit gets messy quick. And there is so much parity at the bottom that, like, it's a little hard to make it very clear who will come in, what each team needs to happen to avoid coming in last. But I'm going to do my best to map it all out. But first, we'll start with the easier stuff. So first, this is first round bye or bust. 2 great matchups. We got the 2 versus 5 in Rick versus Dan Santola. And then we have the 3 versus 4 in Silverman versus me. Chow already has his spot locked up. He's in a different matchup. The fantasy gods just love to make it interesting, and this is how it played out. So Rick is in win it, and he's in. He wins, he gets that second round bye, or that first round bye, the second bye, and it's over. We don't need to talk about anything else. Fate's in his hands. All he needs to do is win. If he loses, things get interesting. So one of the easiest ways for him to get it, or for someone else to get it, is Silverman. If he wins, if Rick loses, Dan needs to outscore Rick by 15, and it's his title. That's honestly the cleanest route to this title. Rick loses, Dan outscores him by 15. And actually, never mind. Now I'm thinking about it, he also needs to outscore Dan Santola, or he just needs to outscore him at all, because Dan Santola is behind him in points. I forget the exact number. For me to win it, I need to beat Dan. I need Rick to lose. And then I need to not get outscored by Rick by 46 and Dan Santola by 103. So if I win and Rick loses, the chances I get that bye week are pretty damn good. Then Santola, he is a long shot, but he can either get a win over Rick, and I lose, and he outscores Silverman by 43, or he beats Rick, I win, and he outscores me by 103. So either way, regardless of how the other matchup plays out, he's going to need to outscore the winner by 43 points. And if it's me, 103. So the odds aren't good for him, but there's still a chance. And he scored the highest total ever in this league. So if there's a team that can do it, certainly can't rule him out to be that team. So those are the first round bye or bust matchups. Now here we get into the nothing to gain, but last place to lose. And this is where shit gets like annoyingly messy. I'm going to break this up into 2 phases to try to clear it up. So Chow and Chris, they got nothing to gain here in the standings. Chris is just playing for pride at this point. He's just trying to show his team is legit. Chow is just trying to score points. He's just trying to win $50. And he needs to do that by outscoring me by 6, Andy by 20, and then making sure no one behind us passes him. That's all he cares about is points. And he also can't fall in the playoffs. He also can't get a bye. So he's just trying to defend his point lead. Winning for him just changes who he plays in the playoffs, and that will be determined by how all the other matchups play. So he really can't worry about that. So what we can do is just ignore those 3 teams right from the get-go. So scratch them out just to make things easier. We're really just talking about 5 other teams. And these 5 teams are fighting to not come in last place. And the simplest way to do that is win. If you win this week, and I'm talking Joe V, Caveney, Dick, Radler, James. If you win, you will not come in last place. If you lose, there will be, at best, a 33% chance of you coming in last. And at worst, maybe a 50% chance. Maybe. I forget. If you lose, you're in tough shit. So I'm going to try to walk through the different scenarios as clearly as possible, but it ain't great. So, Joe V, you're in 8th place. So obviously you're in one of the better positions. You got one of the tougher matchups, though. You just lost a quarterback, and you're going against a team that's won 11 straight. So there's obviously a good chance you do lose. But even if you do lose, you got a 53-point lead on James, a 34-point lead on Dick, a 14-point lead on Radler, and a 2-point lead on Caveney. So you just need one of those teams to lose, and you need to make sure they don't make up that difference. The odds of that happening, of one of those things happening, are in your favor. Caveney, you're in a very similar position. You're the 9 seed. You only have a couple points fewer than Joe V. All you got to do is score points or win, and you should be fine. Same exact scenario that I just outlined, just minus a couple points. 51-point lead on James, 12-point lead on Dick, very small lead on 32-point lead on Dick, 12-point lead on Radler. So it's pretty much the same thing. Good chance you don't come in last unless you have just a terrible week. So no big mistakes, no costly mistakes, you two. You should not be coming in last. The bottom 3 teams, you don't have nearly as many outs because of your point totals. Radler, you're in the middle of pack in this scoring. So if you lose, you're going to need a bad week from others to avoid last, especially because you're going against James, who's in 12th, and he'll automatically pass you. So if you lose, you're really looking at Dick to not outscore you, even if he loses. And if he wins, it doesn't matter. And then you're looking at Caveney, who has a bigger point lead, and Joe V, who has an bigger point lead. So you losing to the number 12 team really sets you up for failure, but you got probably the best chance to win out of this group. So you got to pull off the dub, or at least put up some decent points. You're going to be in trouble. Dick, you trail everyone but James in points. So if you lose, you really want Radler to win. If you don't, then you need to either outscore Radler by 20. You will need to outscore Caveney in a loss by 31, or outscore Joe V in a loss by 32. So there are some outs, but it's not going to be easy. You'll be counting on a lot of losses and some pretty sizable point leads differences to make up for. And then James, just listen to everything I said about Dickey and basically multiply that by 2. You lose to Radler. who's in the 10 spot. And you're going to need to put up some serious points or hopes for some serious duds. You'll need to outscore Dick by 19, Radler by 39, Caveney by 52, or Joe V by 53 in a loss. It might be win or bust for you. It's not looking good. So there are outs for each of these 4 teams, but at the end of the day, you just got to win. You win, you're in, no fucking trophy, shit medal for you. You'll lose, and you're banking on other teams to lose as well, and for them to have bad weeks. And I know some of you in this group have already come in last, maybe last twice. Silverman, if you can look at the medal next time you have it on you and let us know who has come in last twice out of this group, that would be great information to have, because that's just even more pressure. If you're a 3-time loser, that's not good. That's not good. That's not good at all. So those are the matchups. Week 14, final week of the regular season. Last of order of business, pay up, motherfuckers. A few people have Venmo'd me. I haven't really checked it, but pay up. Don't overcomplicate it. Fucking round up a little bit if you think you should pay more than 70 because of your bed situation. Take a few dollars off if you feel like it wasn't great. Other than that, that's really all we got. Got Thursday night football on tonight. I know that's going to be pretty stressful for some people. And then we got a couple days of getting ready for the final week of the regular season. So, let's keep the group chat going. Next week's episode will definitely be a fun one. We'll probably look back and do some recaps of the regular season, as well as doing a small playoff preview for the 4 teams that will be playing. And if you have ideas for things that we can highlight in next week's episode, shoot me a direct text, and I'll see if I can include it. So thanks for listening. Been a lot of fun. Been a great year. And good luck this weekend. Peace out.